The palace floated above the clouds, shining in gold and silver. Its towers reached high into the sky, and the wind sang through the crystal windows. Inside, the Dragon Emperor walked slowly, his long robes brushing the floor. He was tall, strong, and feared by many, but his eyes were always watchful. Today his son, a young dragon-human boy, waited alone in the private garden. The boy had scales that shined like emeralds and small wings on his back. He liked to be alone, but today he looked anxious, twisting his hands together and humming softly to himself. The palace staff moved quickly but carefully around him. They whispered to each other about the boy's strange behavior. He did not speak much and often avoided eye contact. Many had tried to comfort him, but most only grew frustrated. The boy's father, the emperor, had given orders that no one was to force him into social gatherings. Some called the boy difficult, but the emperor only watched silently. He loved his son but did not know how to reach him. A new human servant arrived that morning. She was small, with bright eyes and a gentle smile. Unlike the other humans who served in the palace, she did not bow nervously or rush to please. She simply stood quietly observing the boy. The staff whispered, wondering why she seemed calm when others were tense. The emperor noticed her immediately. He had seen many humans before, but something about her felt different. She moved slowly and carefully toward his son, speaking in soft, clear words. "Hello," she said, "my name is Lyra. May I sit with you?" The boy glanced at her, then looked away. He made a small sound like a soft sigh. Lyra sat on the grass a little distance away, not forcing eye contact, not trying to grab his attention. She simply waited. The boy's scales glimmered in the sunlight as he shifted, unsure of what to do. For several minutes nothing happened. Then Lyra pulled a small wooden toy from her pocket. It was carved into the shape of a dragon. She held it gently and whispered, "Would you like to see?" The boy's eyes flickered toward the toy. Slowly he reached out a hand, just barely touching the edge of it. Lyra smiled softly but did not move. She let him explore at his own pace. The emperor watched from the balcony. His heart, which had been cold for many years, stirred slightly. He had never seen a human understand his son in this way. Other servants had tried to teach the boy manners or make him behave like other children, but Lyra seemed to simply understand. She waited. She watched. She cared. The boy soon picked up the toy and turned it over in his hands. He tapped it lightly on the grass and then held it up to Lyra. She nodded and clapped her hands softly, saying, "Yes. That's wonderful." The boy laughed, a small bright sound that echoed through the garden. It was the first time the emperor had heard his son laugh freely. The staff outside whispered excitedly. They had never seen the boy smile like that. Some wondered if Lyra had a magic they did not understand. The emperor did not speak, but he continued to watch. He noticed how the boy's shoulders relaxed, how the tension left his hands. The small human had found a way to reach him. Lyra did not try to make the boy talk. She only mirrored his actions, picking up sticks and leaves, tapping them gently on the ground, humming the same soft tune he hummed. The boy watched her, then began to hum louder. Soon the two were humming together, their sounds mixing in the quiet morning air. The wind carried their music through the palace halls. After some time the boy grew tired and laid down on the grass. Lyra sat next to him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. She did not push or ask questions. She simply stayed, letting him rest, letting him feel safe. The emperor felt a strange warmth in his chest. He had ruled this palace for many years, commanding armies and negotiating with other kingdoms, but nothing had touched him like this simple scene. When the morning ended, the boy's eyes were bright. He looked at Lyra and gave a small nod as if thanking her. She smiled and whispered, "Tomorrow we will play again." The boy's face lit up with a small, happy smile. The emperor turned away from the balcony. His mind was filled with new thoughts. Humans, he realized, were more than weak creatures. Some, like Lyra, had patience, kindness, and a quiet strength that could reach even a dragon prince. The emperor's heart stirred in a way it never had before. The palace continued its daily rhythm, but the garden remained calm and full of life. Birds sang, the wind whispered, and the boy slept peacefully, knowing someone understood him. Lyra stayed beside him until the end of the morning, then stood and curtsied quietly before leaving. The emperor's eyes followed her, and he knew that this small human had already changed something in his palace and in his heart. For the first time he felt hope. The next morning the sun rose over the palace, painting the towers in gold and pink. The garden was quiet except for the soft sound of birds. The Dragon Emperor's son was already awake, sitting on the grass, spinning a small crystal in his hands. He hummed softly, a habit he had when he felt calm. Lyra, the human servant, arrived quietly, carrying a small wooden box. She sat a short distance away from the boy, smiling gently. "Good morning," she said softly. The boy looked at her briefly and then returned to spinning the crystal. Lyra did not move closer. She simply opened her box and took out a tiny music instrument, shaped like a dragon. She held it in her hands carefully as if it were fragile. The boy tilted his head. He had never seen this before. Lyra tapped it gently and a soft note filled the air. The boy's eyes widened. He reached for it slowly then pulled back. Lyra smiled and said, "You can touch it if you want. I will not take it from you." The boy hesitated, then placed his hands on the instrument. Lyra guided his fingers lightly, showing him how to make sounds. At first, the notes were quiet and uneven, but soon he was tapping in a steady rhythm. His small laugh escaped and he looked at Lyra, surprised by his own joy. The Emperor watched from the balcony, hidden by the tall golden pillars. He could not look away. He had seen humans many times, but he had never seen one teach his son so patiently. Lyra did not force him. She did not rush him. She simply waited and followed his pace. For hours the boy and Lyra played together. He hummed, she hummed, and soon their music mixed in harmony. The palace birds sang along, and the wind seemed to carry their melody throughout the halls. Slowly the boy began to speak in small words. "More, please," he said, pointing to the instrument. Lyra's face lit up with a smile. "You want more notes?" she asked softly. He nodded. She tapped the instrument again, showing him new sounds. The boy repeated them carefully. Each time he succeeded, Lyra clapped her hands softly and the boy laughed louder. His scales shimmered in the sunlight, brighter than they had before. The court staff watched quietly from a distance. Many had never believed humans could be so useful. Some whispered that Lyra had a gift. She seemed to know the boy better than anyone in the palace. The Emperor did not speak to anyone. He only continued to watch. His heart felt a warmth he had not known in centuries. After the music session, Lyra took out a small sketchbook and colored pencils. She drew simple shapes and dragons, letting the boy follow along. He scribbled on the paper, sometimes overlapping her drawings, but she only encouraged him. "That's wonderful," she said. "You are making it your own." For the first time the boy showed pride in his work. He held up the paper for Lyra to see, smiling widely. Lyra smiled back, nodding. "You did it all by yourself." The boy laughed and tapped the paper again, happy with his creation. Later the boy grew tired and lay down on the grass. Lyra sat beside him, humming softly. The boy rested his head on her lap, closing his eyes. She did not move him. She did not speak. She simply let him rest, feeling safe and cared for. The Emperor felt something strange. He had always thought humans were weak and simple, but this one had patience, understanding, and kindness. She did not demand anything. She did not act out of fear. She acted out of care. The Emperor's chest tightened. He realized that humans at their best could teach even dragons something powerful. The afternoon passed. The boy woke slowly and looked at Lyra. "Again?" he asked quietly. Lyra nodded. "Tomorrow we can do it again," she said. The boy smiled, and for the first time the Emperor noticed how much the boy's face had changed. His eyes were brighter, his movements calmer, and his laughter genuine. The other servants whispered among themselves. Some were worried about giving too much attention to a human. Others were amazed at how well she understood the boy. The Emperor did not answer their questions. He only felt his heart stir with emotions he could not name. As the sun began to set, Lyra helped the boy pick up his toys and papers. She led him to the palace hall and tucked him in carefully. The boy whispered a soft thank you before closing his eyes. Lyra smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his face. She whispered, "Sleep well. Tomorrow will be another good day." The Emperor remained on the balcony long after the boy was asleep. He thought of Lyra and the boy, and how the smallest human could make such a difference. His heart was no longer entirely cold. He realized that strength was not only in power or fear. It was also in patience, care, and understanding. That night, the Emperor walked through the empty palace halls, thinking of what he had witnessed. He understood that his son's happiness was connected to this human's kindness. For the first time he considered the idea that humans, though fragile, could change hearts, even the heart of a dragon emperor. And so, in the quiet palace under the stars, the boy slept peacefully, the human servant watched over him, and the emperor's heart began to stir with hope for a new tomorrow. The next morning the palace was busy. Servants moved quickly, arranging decorations and preparing for the emperor's meeting with foreign dignitaries. The dragon emperor's son sat in the private garden, humming softly as usual. Lyra, the human servant, entered quietly with a small basket of toys and musical instruments. She greeted the boy with a gentle smile. "Good morning," she said softly. The boy glanced at her and held out his hand, inviting her to sit nearby. Lyra sat carefully, placing the basket beside her. She took out a small drum and tapped it gently. The boy's eyes lit up and he began tapping along with her. The Emperor watched from the balcony, but today his mind was uneasy. One of his advisors had spoken to him earlier, warning that a human servant should not have such influence over his son. "Humans are weak," the advisor said. "They cannot understand dragon minds. You risk your son learning the wrong ways." The Emperor had remained silent then, but now he felt a small tension in his chest. Could the advisor be right? Could a human, even one as gentle as Lyra, do harm? He watched as the boy laughed freely, his wings fluttering slightly in excitement. Lyra guided his hands gently on the drum, showing him new rhythms. Her patience was endless, her attention unwavering. The advisor appeared again, walking briskly through the garden. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing low, "should you allow this human to influence the boy so much? He should learn the ways of dragons, not the soft ways of humans." The Emperor did not answer immediately. He continued to watch his son. The boy's laughter, the joy in his movements, and the calm that surrounded him, all of it came from Lyra. The Emperor felt a quiet doubt about the advisor's words. Perhaps there was more to strength than he had understood. Lyra noticed the advisor watching them from a distance. She did not pause or show fear. Instead, she encouraged the boy to try a new rhythm on the drum. "You can do it," she said softly. The boy concentrated, tapping carefully. When he succeeded, Lyra clapped gently. The boy beamed, proud of himself. The advisor frowned. He had never seen a human inspire confidence in a dragon prince. Most humans only caused frustration, but Lyra seemed to bring out the best in the boy. The Emperor's heart stirred, but he did not show it. He needed to understand this better before speaking. After the music session, Lyra pulled out paper and colored pencils. She began drawing simple shapes, dragons and stars. The boy copied her movements slowly, learning to make shapes carefully. When he finished, Lyra praised him. "That's wonderful. You made it all yourself." The boy smiled shyly, holding up his paper. "Again?" he whispered. Lyra nodded. "Tomorrow we can draw more," she said. The boy laughed softly, happy with the idea. The Emperor stayed on the balcony, observing quietly. He realized something important. Lyra was teaching more than music or drawing. She was teaching patience, focus, and trust. She was showing his son that mistakes were okay, that learning was fun, and that someone cared for him no matter what. Later in the day, the boy grew restless. The palace was noisy, with announcements and footsteps echoing through the halls. He pulled at his hair and made small anxious sounds. Lyra noticed immediately. She put down the toys and instruments and gently guided him to a quiet corner of the garden. She wrapped a soft blanket around his shoulders and sat beside him, humming softly. The boy leaned against her, feeling safe. His breathing slowed and the tension left his body. Lyra whispered softly, "It's okay. You're safe. I am here with you." Slowly the boy nodded, closing his eyes. He felt calm, something he rarely experienced in the busy palace. The Emperor watched, his heart heavy with thought. The court advisor had warned him about humans, but what he saw was the opposite. This human, small and gentle, had more strength than any soldier or guard. She had the courage to be patient, the wisdom to understand, and the love to comfort. That evening the advisor returned, bowing stiffly. "Your Majesty," he said, "I still advise caution. A human cannot truly guide a dragon prince. You risk showing weakness to your enemies." The Emperor finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "Watch carefully," he said. "Observe what happens when one does not use fear or force." He gestured toward the garden. The advisor looked, seeing Lyra quietly comforting the boy, guiding him with patience and care. He could not find fault, though his pride would not allow him to admit it. The Emperor walked through the quiet palace halls later that night, thinking about the day. Lyra had shown him something he had never understood. Strength was not only in power or fear. Sometimes strength was quiet, soft, and patient. It was in understanding, in care, and in giving someone the courage to face the world. In his son's room, the boy slept peacefully, Lyra watching over him like a guardian. The Emperor stopped at the doorway, observing the scene. His heart stirred again, and he understood that humans, though small and fragile in appearance, could possess a strength dragons had never recognized. For the first time, the Emperor considered that perhaps his son's happiness, and the future of his palace, depended not on fear or power, but on compassion, understanding, and the quiet courage of one human who dared to care. The palace lights dimmed and the night grew still. The emperor left the room, silently promising himself that he would watch carefully, learn carefully, and perhaps, one day, allow a new kind of strength to grow within his son's life, and his own heart. The day of the grand ceremony arrived. The palace was alive with color and light, banners waving in the wind and crystal chandeliers reflecting the sunlight. The Dragon Emperor's son was expected to perform a ritual, one that symbolized the strength and wisdom of the royal family. Many nobles and visitors had gathered to watch. The boy, however, sat in his private chamber, fidgeting and looking frightened. The crowds, the noise, and the unfamiliar faces made him anxious. Lyra arrived quietly, carrying the small instruments and familiar toys she had used to calm him before. She saw the fear in his eyes and knelt beside him. "It's okay," she said softly. "I am here. You can do this. We will go together." The boy hesitated, his hands trembling. He wanted to hide, to run away from the ceremony. Lyra placed her hand gently on his arm. "I will stay with you. You are safe," she whispered. Slowly he nodded, trusting her. The emperor, from the balcony, watched closely. He had attended many ceremonies, but he had never felt the same worry he felt for his son now. His heart tightened as he saw the boy's hesitation. He wanted to intervene but knew that the moment belonged to Lyra and his son. Lyra led the boy through the palace halls, moving carefully so the crowds could not see them too closely. She hummed softly, a tune the boy recognized. Step by step, she guided him, whispering encouragement. "You can do this. I believe in you," she said. The boy focused on her voice, letting it guide him instead of the noise around him. Finally, they reached the ceremonial hall. The boy's small wings quivered, and he looked at the gathered nobles with wide eyes. The crowd murmured as the boy stepped forward, unsure of himself. Lyra stayed behind, close enough to offer support but far enough not to distract. She gave a small nod of encouragement. The emperor watched silently. He felt a mix of pride, fear, and hope. The boy began the ritual, moving slowly at first. He followed the steps carefully, repeating the motions he had seen his father perform. His hands shook, but he continued. The crowd held its breath, waiting for any mistake. Then Lyra softly clapped her hands and hummed the familiar tune. The boy's expression changed. His confidence grew. He moved more smoothly, following the rhythm of the music she had taught him. Step by step, he completed the ritual, performing each motion perfectly. The crowd gasped, amazed at his focus and skill. The ceremony ended with applause and cheers. The boy's eyes shone with pride and he looked toward Lyra, smiling brightly. She returned his smile, clapping softly for him. He had succeeded not because of fear or force but because someone had believed in him. The emperor felt an overwhelming surge of emotion. He realized that the human servant had done something no one else in the palace had been able to do. She had given his son courage, patience, and the belief that he could succeed. The strength she had shown, quiet, gentle, and unwavering, was more powerful than any army or weapon. After the ceremony, the emperor entered the hall. He approached Lyra first, bowing deeply. "You have done more than anyone could imagine," he said. "You have guided my son with care, patience, and courage. You have my respect." Lyra bowed, a small smile on her face. "I only did what I could, Your Majesty," she said softly. "He trusted me and I followed him, not my orders." The emperor looked at his son, who stood proudly beside Lyra. The boy's scales shimmered in the sunlight, his eyes bright with happiness. The emperor felt his heart stir in a way it never had before. He understood now that true strength was not only in power or fear. It was in understanding, patience, and the courage to care for another being. The nobles and advisors whispered among themselves. Some were impressed. Some were unsure how to respond. But the emperor paid them no mind. He focused on what truly mattered: his son's happiness and the quiet human who had made it possible. Later that evening, the palace was quiet again. Lyra helped the boy settle into his room, ensuring he was comfortable and calm. The boy whispered a soft "thank you," and she nodded. "Tomorrow will be another good day," she said gently. The emperor stood outside the room, watching silently. He realized that the human servant had not only helped his son succeed but had taught him something invaluable as well. She had shown him the power of empathy, patience, and trust, the qualities that could change hearts, even the heart of a dragon emperor. For the first time, the emperor felt hope for the future. Not just for his son but for the palace, for humans, and for a new way of ruling. He understood that strength could come in unexpected forms, that even the smallest, gentlest beings could make the greatest difference. As the night fell, the boy slept peacefully and Lyra stayed beside him, watching over him like a guardian. The emperor returned to his chambers, his heart lighter than it had been in centuries. He knew that the human servant had changed his son's life, and his own. In the quiet palace under the stars, a new understanding had begun. A new kind of strength, born from patience, care and trust, had taken root. And the Dragon Emperor's heart, once cold and distant, had begun to stir with hope, pride, and something he had never felt before, true admiration for humanity. The morning after the ceremony was calm and quiet. Sunlight spilled through the tall crystal windows of the palace, lighting the floors in gold. The Dragon Emperor walked slowly through the halls, thinking about what had happened the day before. His heart, once cold and distant, still felt a strange warmth. He had watched his son succeed, guided by a small human servant who had shown patience, courage and understanding. In the garden, Lyra was already with the boy. She smiled softly as he tapped a small drum in rhythm, humming quietly. The boy's laughter filled the air, light and free, and the emperor stopped at the balcony to watch. He realized that this human had changed something deeper than just his son's confidence. She had changed his view of humans entirely. The emperor entered the garden quietly, careful not to startle them. The boy looked up and smiled, and Lyra nodded at him gently. "Good morning," she said softly. The boy ran toward the emperor, holding the small dragon-shaped drum. "Father," he called, his voice full of excitement. The emperor knelt and took the drum, examining it with care. "I see you are happy," he said, smiling. The boy nodded vigorously. "I learned from Lyra," he said proudly. Lyra only smiled, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder gently. The emperor looked at her with new respect. "You have done more than anyone could have imagined," he said. "You have guided my son with care, patience and courage. You have my deepest respect." Lyra bowed slightly, her eyes bright. "I only followed him, Your Majesty," she said softly. "He trusted me and I did my best to help him." The emperor nodded slowly. For centuries he had ruled with strength and fear, believing that power and discipline were the most important qualities. But now he understood something different. True strength could come from kindness, patience and understanding. Even the smallest human could teach a dragon prince courage, joy and confidence. The boy ran to Lyra, holding her hand. "We can play more today," he said. Lyra smiled, nodding. "Yes, we can," she said. The emperor watched them, feeling a warmth in his chest he had never known. Later, the emperor called his advisors to the hall. They bowed low, but their expressions were tense. "Your Majesty," one began, "should we be cautious? This human." The emperor held up his hand. "Watch carefully," he said. "See what has been accomplished without force, without fear. Strength is not always in power. Sometimes strength is in patience, understanding and care." The advisors looked uncertain, but they could not deny the truth. The boy's happiness, his confidence, and his success in the ceremony were clear for all to see. And the human servant had made it possible. That evening, the emperor invited Lyra to the private chamber. He spoke softly, not as a ruler, but as a father who had learned something new. "You have changed my son's life," he said. "And you have changed mine as well. Humans, I thought, were weak and simple. But you have shown me that they can be brave, wise, and strong in ways I never understood." Lyra bowed her head. "I only did what I could," she said. "He is special, Your Majesty. He taught me too." The emperor smiled faintly, feeling a deep respect and admiration. "Yes," he said. "He is special. And so are you. You have my gratitude and my trust." In the quiet of the palace, a new understanding began to grow. The emperor knew that humans could no longer be seen as weak or unworthy. They had their own strength, a strength that could touch hearts, teach patience and inspire courage. The boy slept peacefully that night, his small wings tucked close to his body, safe in the knowledge that he was understood and loved. Lyra stayed nearby, humming softly, keeping watch. The emperor, standing in the doorway, watched silently. For the first time in centuries he felt peace, pride, and hope all at once. In the days that followed, the palace changed in small ways. Servants treated each other with more patience. The boy began to explore new skills and interests, always guided by Lyra. The emperor observed quietly, learning from the human's example. He spoke more gently to his son and encouraged other humans in the palace to show care and understanding, rather than fear or strict discipline. One evening, as the sun set over the floating palace, the emperor walked to the garden where the boy and Lyra were playing. He sat down quietly, watching them laugh and create music together. His heart stirred fully now, filled with a sense of wonder and admiration. "Humans," he said softly to himself, are stronger than I ever imagined. The boy looked up and waved. Lyra smiled at the Emperor. He nodded, a small smile crossing his face. In that moment, the palace, the boy, and the human servant became symbols of a new beginning. A beginning where kindness, patience, and understanding could change even the heart of a dragon emperor. The stars appeared above the palace towers, shining softly. The dragon emperor's heart was no longer cold. It beat with hope, warmth, and a new respect for humanity. The boy laughed, Lyra hummed, and the emperor knew that his son's life, and his own, had been forever changed by the courage and care of one small human. And so, in the floating palace above the clouds, a new era began, where dragons and humans could grow together, learn from each other, and find strength not only in power, but in the quiet bravery of the heart.